Welcome to the 37th episode of Financial Independence Retire Early. My name is Bird, and today's episode is actually a response to a question somebody asked about the previous episode, which is what is BRICS? What is its practical or pragmatic value to maybe South Africans? And also, how will it eventually, lead to a devaluation of the dollar, or a decrease in the dollar's value as the global reserve currency, right? So what is BRICS, right? BRICS is an economic, I guess, amalgamation of countries. The specific countries are Brazil B, Russia R, India I, China C, and South Africa S. So these five countries are countries with long-standing, political and military relationships, right? Ideological, political, military relationships. Whether it's the communist relationship between China and Russia, or the anti-imperialist relationship between China, South Africa, and Russia and Brazil, or just generally now what is the economic relationship with these five countries, or also the long-standing historical political relationship between South Africa and India, and also the tense relationship between India and China. But basically these five countries have come together to kind of chart a new path, a way that is different from the limitations and expectations of the Western world, which is pretty much Europe and America. You can throw New Zealand in there, or pretty much the Commonwealth countries, which we are part of too. But the Commonwealth countries, Europe and America, they make up the West. So these five countries came together and are charting a path for themselves outside the West. BRICS, in its formality, started as BRIC, maybe 15 years ago, but as BRICS, it's been like this probably since 2010. So it's not that old, but the relationship between these countries go back, thousands of years, right? Hundreds of years, if I can put it that way. Between India, Russia, and Brazil and South Africa, they go back hundreds of years. But between India and China, they probably go back thousands of years. You know what I'm saying? So, but for modern day relevance, these are 100-year-old relationships between these five countries, which are now becoming, economic in the future, right? Focus on economic partnership as it relates to the future. And how do they then what is their value to South Africans? I'll get in that. But how do they then devalue the American dollar, or what is their role in decreasing the strength of the dollar as a global reserve currency? So if you look at BRICS, right, that's 40% of the world. That's 30% of the global GDP, and that's a lot of where the resources that are used in the world come from. So, China, India, South Africa, and Brazil, Russia too. Actually, these are really, really strong resource countries, whether it's oil, whether it's natural resources like gold, aluminium, whether it's now these resources that are needed in electric cars and and tech. I just forgot the word. It's going to come to me. But these resources, they are important to the functioning of the modern day world, and these five countries have a stronghold in all of these resources. And on top of that, they are strong militarily. I mean, China and Russia are really strong military countries. India is also kind of becoming strong militarily. South Africa is one of the strongest military in the continent of Africa. So they are strong political, economic, human resource, natural resource strength within these countries. And if these countries start to do trade within themselves, you can that whole $30 trillion economy, will now be measured in like yen or rubles, you know what I'm saying, or rupees. You know what I'm saying? So countries, I'll put it like this: when now as a South African, I'm trying to buy something from Russia or from America, I go through the SWIFT payment processing system. What does that mean? It means these banks have payment processes within themselves for international payments, and these international payments are processed with American dollars. So if I'm going to use the bank that I use, the South African bank, for example, Capitec or ABSA, and I'm trying to buy something from somebody that uses Kalashnikov Bank in Russia, right? ABSA and Kalashnikov Bank are going to communicate in US dollars, not in rands or rubles. They're going to communicate in US dollars, which means they have to have a third party, fourth party, whatever, that actually does this transaction in US dollars. They also have to have US dollars, and that is what is called the reserve currency in these banks. They have to have a certain amount of US dollars in order to be able to participate in global payment systems. Right? So that means that everybody has to now buy US dollars, because nobody can print or make US dollars. South Africa can't print US dollars. Russia can't print US dollars. Only America can print US dollars. But everybody now needs US dollars for trade. So that gives value to the US dollar, an artificial value. That is not limited within the scope of America and its territories. But now every other country in the world, every territory in the world has to have US dollars, right? So that is an artificial value, an artificial strength of the US dollar. Now, if that trade is now switched to rands, if that trade is now switched to rubles or ones, renminbis, right? Now that people will not have the need to buy these US dollars anymore. So the demand will drastically, at a rate of at least 30 trillion, right? Realistically, maybe five, in the next 3 or 4 years. But in the next 20 odd years, it could go down as these economies grow also. Knowing that India is one of the fastest growing economies and populations in the world, knowing that Africa is one of the fastest growing populations in the world, knowing that Brazil also has, a strong economic backbone as it relates to population, that they have a very young population. On top of that, they have a lot of natural resources. That's a lot of potential. You know what I'm saying? So that's a lot of population dividend that can come through in the future. So if all of these economies grow, if all of these countries become stronger and grow, that will give a lot of strength, to these countries, and a lot of strength away from the US dollar if they shift away from the US dollar. So that is what I mean when I say the unification, the economic unification of these five countries and all these other countries that are trying to buy into BRICS. Right, we know that Argentina is trying to join BRICS, Nigeria is trying to join BRICS, Saudi Arabia is trying to join BRICS, the UAE is trying to join BRICS. Egypt is trying to join BRICS. So if all of these, Venezuela is probably also trying to join BRICS. If all of these countries become a part of what is BRICS Plus, right, and they then participate with the BRICS Development Bank, right, and the BRICS payment system, right, the Chinese-based or the Russian-based payment system, that will move a lot of value away from the US dollar. Imagine if now we're buying oil from Saudi Arabia in rands, effectively, right? We don't need dollars. So the petrodollar, the petrodollar will lose a lot of its value and will lose a lot of its strength. So if these countries, and including all the other countries that want to join, if all of these economies move away from using the dollar as their reserve currency, that will destroy a lot of value that the US dollar has. And effectively, people might then move to crypto, right? Because now I don't have to buy things in dollars anymore. I can buy things in crypto. If I'm trying to buy something in Turkey, I can buy it with Dogecoin. I can buy it with Bitcoin. I don't have to get rand. I don't have to get, even rands too. I don't have to get rands anywhere. I don't have to get dollars anywhere. I'm using Bitcoin. I'm using crypto. So the stronger these payment systems become that are outside of the US dollar denominator, the US dollar controlled payment systems, then the less value, the less strength the US dollar has. Right, and that is why BRICS is also so important, because we know that America uses the dollar as a weapon. We know that America uses the dollar as a tool. The moment they don't like you, they block you. We've seen what they did to Zimbabwe. We see what they're trying to do to Russia. The moment they don't like you, they block you from participating in the global economy. Right, so if Zimbabwe joins BRICS, or if Zimbabwe just starts using cryptocurrency, or starts using more of Russia's Russian currency or Chinese currency, because they know that they can buy things internationally using Chinese currency, then they don't need the dollar. Then all these sanctions that people put are effectively useless. You know what I'm saying? So that's also why the American government is not so pro crypto behind the scenes. Because they know the threat that crypto is to American global economic power. Right, now we're moving to the value that it brings to South Africa specifically. Now I want to bring in another portion here, which is called ACFTA, the African Free Continental Trade Agreement. Right, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Yes, ACFTA. This is an act, that is deliberately by I think all of the African countries have probably signed by now. So these African countries, we are coming together to improve trade and movement within the limitations of the African continent, and our partners and brothers and sisters in Madagascar, and all the other brothers and sisters that will join the African Union. These are Caribbean countries, South American countries that have a strong African diaspora population. If all these countries come together within the AU and within the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, again, we will not need, foreign investors. We will not need US dollars. We can do all this movement and all this trade within ourselves. I can, especially the fact that we need to also evolve and grow the hegemony that Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt have. Angola, its economy needs to start growing. Rwanda, all these rising African economies. It'll be easier for me as South African to do trade, right? To buy resources from, for example, buy oil from Angola, buy refinery machine from China and Russia, and sell the oil to Swaziland as a South African, right? If I work within the boundaries of the African Free Trade Agreement, we can improve, right, the economic standing. We can develop Africa that much faster using our BRICS partners and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Again, that example is, as a South African, I buy oil from Angola. I can refine it in Angola, or I can refine it in South Africa and then sell it to Mozambique or sell it to Swaziland. So that is the opportunities, and we can fund that using the BRICS Development Bank and all the other banks that are within the BRICS system and the African Free Trade Continental Agreement. We don't need to now be running to the IMF or the World Bank or any other European or American bank for assistance. We can create our own banking systems with our own payment processes and with our own continental trading agreements. We can now start building, roads, trains, right, shipping ports. We can now start becoming industrialists. We can start using our natural resources, buying machinery and technology from China and India and Russia, and actually now beneficiate all those resources within our continent, because now it is easier for us using BRICS and African Continental Free Trade Agreement to buy technologies. It is easier for us to then buy human resources or share knowledge within as human resources, because we have these movement and trade agreements, and then we can now build Africa, right, without having, the stick of the IMF or the carrot of the World Bank. Yeah, man, they use sticks. There are very, very few carrots with those people. But that's what I'm saying. All of these developments are strengthening, the so-called third world, and effectively, not so deliberately though, but it's just a side effect of their weakening the first world. But we're not necessarily opposing America. We're not opposing Europe. We're not against the World Bank. We're not against the IMF. We're just saying we need space and room to make our own decisions using our own resources, our own intellect, our own hard work, right? Basically, that's all I'm saying. And these trade agreements between BRICS, between the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, they will make it easier for us as South Africans, for us as Africans in general, to start participating and competing, right, with the global economy on our own terms, in a way that benefits us, in a way that makes sense to our realities, right, and our hopes and our ambitions. You know what I'm saying? For example, I mean, development is not necessarily Coca-Cola and McDonald's. Us having the opportunity to buy a Coca-Cola and McDonald's and Hermes is not necessarily us being developed. You know what I'm saying? But if we can create our own companies, our own institutions, our own version, if I want to call it that, of Hermes and Coca-Cola and McDonald's, that's a certain level of development. And I think these free trade agreements between BRICS and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement give a lot of opportunity to all of these, sleeping giants: Kenya, Tanzania, Angola, Botswana. Come on, Ghana, come on. Come on, all of these sleeping giants. Come on, Burkina Faso, come on. Mali, where you at? Right? We need to start working together. We need to start thinking together. We need to start investing with each other and growing together. And that is, the opportunity that these free trade continental agreements have. Yeah. Thank you for watching. Again, ask any question. I'll be really glad to explain to the best of my ability. Again, this is not financial advice. This is me sharing what I think I know, what I think I understand, hoping that you can also tell me what you think what you think you understand. We can, 3, 4 heads are always better than one. Bye.